Great. Now, when we move to EMA, okay, and I want to spend some time to be able to on this piece because solving for this is one thing, but what is important to really understand is most organizations are very uh, careful nowadays about environment and the harm that they provide or can provide to the environment. So the important bit when you're talking about in EMA, which is nothing but your environment management accounting, is how are you as an organization even seeing environment play a role in taking the right decisions when you come to from a business perspective. That's the important part over here. Let me give you an example. And I don't know if you any of y'all have heard, but a lot of organizations are targeting to be net zero, carbon neutral, uh, and this has become very predominant over the last 2 to 3 years on how every organization wants to be environment neutral and when it comes to providing harm out there to the environment. Now there are multiple reasons for this kind of awareness over the last few years and how businesses see profitability to come in when they are more focused on environment as a subject. Okay. One of the first and foremost important things to understand over here is what is being carbon neutral, what is being net zero, what is being environment friendly. Is how are you as a business taking the right decisions to try and identify alternate resources to either buy, look at options, package, and even provide any bit of uh, socio-economic support to organizations which are working back in the entire domain of environment friendliness. And why businesses are seeing this to be more and more important is because customers are starting to look at products which are environment friendly when they want to buy something. Governments are taking very strong decisions against and slowly but strong decisions against anything which may be environment hazardous. So for example, if you would have heard from 1st of July, that is from today, there's this entire piece around ban against single use of plastic all over again. At one point in time it had become a big thing 3 years ago where your regular sabzi walas etc could not give you vegetables in plastic bags anymore, but this has come back and going to be hitting even harder to say let's ban all use of single use of plastic. Now with this, the way every organization has to reorganize their way of doing business, their supply chain, their way of packaging and machinery and etc everything around it, and everything that happens subsequently over there as well. So today, if at all you had the option to go ahead and buy a product, I mean, may or may not be you to be able to take that decision, but to say that if you have two t-shirts at the same price versus one of that has been made uh, or one of them is saying that at no point in time through the entire life of this t-shirt has it touched plastic, or the fact that if you buy this t-shirt the manufacturer plants 5 trees in your name in some place if you buy this over something else or the other t-shirt, there is a very high probability that customers will choose something which is more environment friendly or can contribute to the environment in some shape or form rather than the other one, right? I did a very big project for a client which is in the oil and gas industry. uh, they're looking at they're looking at being carbon neutral in the year 2050. That is how difficult it is to be carbon neutral. They are really having a 28 They actually had a 30-year roadmap. They started in 2020, a 30-year roadmap to really be carbon neutral over a period of time. Now, the study that I did over there was, let's try and identify how does this organization do buying, and based on what product they buy, how which vendor are they buying from, and what's the distance between the vendor and the point at which the vendor does delivery of the goods, and what is the mode of transport that the vendor uses to deliver these goods, whether it's being couriered through air, whether it's coming through train, whether it's coming through waterways, or it is coming through road. They're doing some big amount of global purchasing. So they buy from, I mean, they're oil and gas. So they do a lot of buying from Middle East, which they end up getting supplied all the way up to UK, they get them supplied all the way up to Portugal, to Africa, etc. So there is a lot of global procurement that ends up happening. So based on what they buy, based on what is the distance between where they buy from and where they consume, and the mode of transport through which this transportation ends up happening, we were able to identify what is the carbon emissions that they are contributing to from an environment perspective. And there was a lot of comparative study that we were able to do. You know, for this country, you are better when it comes to carbon emissions. For this country, you're not too good. For this line of business, what does it look like? For that line of business, what does it look like? So we did a lot of comparative study around it and got presented to the global CFO and the global CEO of the organization to say that this is the tool that we are coming up with, which could do, based on past data of purchasing, it could do future analysis, which is using machine learning and artificial intelligence tools to say what will your carbon emissions be for a certain business over a period of time, depending on your procurement patterns. And based on that, they could actually take strategic decisions to say, you know what, instead of buying from Middle East, if I need oil, I should maybe buy from somewhere closer to a certain country. It may be cheaper, it may be lesser impact onto onto the environment. If I don't use this mode of transport, but I use this mode of transport, it would be better. This is the impact that will have on carbon emissions. So it became, the full project that we did became a huge hit because of the amount of value that we were able to bring across to say that this is how we could actually impact your business strategy and hasten or fasten your entire process of being carbon neutral in 2050. You don't need to wait that long. You can get insight to do this much faster. Now, what does it do to the organization is, it's a great perception that they can really bring across to all their customers. We are carbon neutral. We think about society. For everything that goes wrong through a supply chain, we've got corrective measures in place. We do stuff for the environment, and hence we are going to be carbon positive at some point in time rather than being carbon negative. That's one bit. So the entire perception, it can be a great marketing tool to be able to get more sales and drive more sales. Investors nowadays have started looking at the entire piece around environment friendliness in a very, very big way as well. So when you're looking at any bit of investment that are happening into a certain business, whenever you're looking at funding happening, when you're talking about Series B, Series C, Series C funding, etc., you'll end up seeing that a lot of organizations have a focus on how are they really behaving with the environment, what are the good things that they're doing, how are they ensuring the fact that they're reducing the harm that they provide to the environment, which makes them more attractive for investor funding and for seed funding and any bit of venture capital funding as well. So a lot of that comes in as a part of this piece over here. Lenders, it's a great selling proposition to say that this is what I'm doing for the environment. There will be possibilities of lenders also getting more in tune towards giving loans at cheaper rates, hence making a massive difference to the business model altogether. The last but not the least is regulations. Slowly and steadily, there are regulations that are coming into play, which need the organization to be more carbon understanding, or rather environment understanding, and ensuring the fact that they are doing things that they should be doing for the environment. They are less harmful, and all of that piece comes into play over here. I don't know how many of you all remember, but about 2-3 years ago, there was a big case that ended up happening around the emissions that were coming out of Volkswagen cars across the world. Do you all remember reading about anything like this? Volkswagen was fined some $150 billion or $200 billion because the cars that they were using failed environment tests. Actually, it was not just failing environment tests, but they took conscious decisions to not go ahead and declare that they had put in some malpractices around their cars, which did not give out the right carbon emission values that it was actually providing. I mean, that it was throwing back into the environment. Anyone read about this? No? Shruti, you remember? You don't.
I do remember, sir. Economics Times I've read about 1.5 years before.
Have you read it only
Economic,
then, or you've been reading Economic Times since then?
नहीं अभी इतना नहीं, but I go through all headlines.
But this was a very, very, very big thing. So about 2.5 years ago, they were slapped by governing bodies across the world by billions of dollars. So if you'll ever get time during this week, it's a very interesting piece to really read back up on. Now, when the part which has become very, very important when it comes to reporting is triple bottom line. I don't know if you all have read about it or studied about it as a part of college. But every organization should not just be bothered about profit, but it should really be bothered about their people, and it should be bothered about the environment. So what are they doing for profit is one thing, that they do all the financial pieces, etc., all of that bit. The second one, an important part, is what are they doing about their employees and their people? And the last one over there is the environment. What are they doing about the environment? How harmful are they to the environment? And what are they doing to be able to reduce that bit of harm that it impacts the environment because of their pretty much existence? So that's what triple bottom line is all about. And that's where it became extremely important for most organizations to report on all of these three aspects. I'm going to let you all read a little bit on page 120 and 121 before we go ahead in this topic.
So life costing in service industry.
I'm sorry, life costing?
In service industry, it's 120.
Okay. If you've not read through that already, I will cover it after I'm done.
Also, you asked us to read 120 and 121.
Yes, but right now what I see on 121 is, I mean, on 120 is
120 is covering.
environmental management accounting, which
No,
is
sir. In
section
our
30.
books, 120 is covering life cycle costing in the service sector.
Okay, in my book, I am seeing environment management accounting, which is point number 13,
So can you
which
please name
starts
the
on page
topic?
120.
Environmental management accounting. That is what we are supposed to do.
Yes.
Right?
So I
Okay.
want you to read the first 2 pages of that.
Thank you, sir.
Are we done?
So can you like briefly once again explain that triple A part like bit?
Triple bottom line.
Yeah, the triple bottom line.
I'll just do it once everyone's done.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Are we all done? Okay. Just a quick point around the triple bottom line that is that every organization should really look at three P's that they really focus on. Okay. It is profit, people, and planet. So that's what the three P's really stand in for. Or you can look at it from a economic, uh, it is economic, it is social, and environment or financial. So you can either look at ESF or triple P, which really needs to focus, which any organization really needs to focus on when it comes to triple bottom. Now, what is it that they really have to show as a part of this piece? When you look at profit, profit is pretty simple because something that any business really bothers about is, are we profitable? Are we making, what are the type of products that we're selling? Where do we make profit? Where do we make losses? Everything to do with financial stuff that we all already are aware of. The second piece comes to is people. How are you taking care of your people? Is there career path that you really have? What are your rewards and recognition programs? What are your hiring practices? Are you how are you making sure that you are impartial when it comes to hiring the right talent and competency that you really have? How are you impartial when it comes to promoting people, rewarding people? All of those pieces come in as a part of good people practices. If you would have if you would have seen or anyone seen any of these hiring posts that really come in on LinkedIn and other portals nowadays, is it very clearly says that we are an organization which gives equal opportunity of employment to all genders, sex, uh, origin, color, race, nationality. We don't we don't favor one over the other. And there's a nice little long paragraph that really talks about the fact that we are an open organization, a liberal organization that gives an opportunity for one and all. We have these practices to ensure the fact that there is no favoritism or bias that comes in into the organization either. So a lot of those are things that people do when it comes to the social or the people aspect of the triple bottom line. And the third one, which is either environment or planet, whichever way you look at it, is what is the type of thing that you're doing to ensure that you're not harming the environment or harming society? Is are we if we are in the business of uh, providing goods to the customers? Are we taking care of the fact that we are reducing any bit of packaging cost through the entire chain of activities? Because are we reducing the use of plastic through the entire packaging process? What are the type of things that we're doing to ensure that plastic gets reusable at some point in time? If you look at, and I don't know how many of you all have ever seen these machines, but if you really go through Europe, if you're buying a Bisleri bottle and you're paying money to be obviously buy a Bisleri bottle, there are actually machines put in different parts in malls, in shopping complexes, in out in the open, in tourist spots, etc., where if you've emptied a Bisleri bottle, or you once you're done with the water, you can actually put that bottle back into a machine which pays you money for every bottle that you give them back. Now, that is an environmental friendly initiative by the company like Bisleri to be able to collect any of this bit of plastic bottles back from the market, to ensure the fact that that is a part that's a role that they are playing to be able to ensure that we are not harming the environment. Are we clear with it? Did you get all the three pieces of the bottom line?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Any questions from anybody else before we proceed? Okay, great. Now the question is, when you're looking at from the entire piece around adherence to these norms, how does it really impact me as a business? One, does it impact in me in increase of cost? The answer is yes. I have to be constantly on the lookout for other alternatives to ensure that how do I reduce impact onto the environment. If there is wastage that I was just dumping into the water or into a river or into the sea, how am I treating my waste? So I have to have a treatment plant to ensure the fact that it gets treated before it gets soiled into the sea or into a landfill or wherever it may be. So does it lead to an increase in cost? The answer is yes. Does it reduce the uh, cost of compliance or cost of non-compliance? The answer is yes again. Because if you would not have done it and you get fined, the cost of adherence or penalties would have been way higher than the cost of actually ensuring that you adhere to the respective norms. So that's what you really want to play very, very closely and thinly over. That cost of failure is extremely expensive in this piece. Does it lead to increase in revenue? The answer is yes again. I mean, if you at the end of the day, if you look at batteries, those batteries that you use on remotes, etc., and all of those pieces which are lithium, if there was ever a environment friendly alternative to that piece, there would be humongous amount of sale that will come about as a part of that activity over there. If you remember that there was this one company that actually even did a lot of advertising around cigarettes and cigarette butts, is every time you throw a cigarette butt, it actually had a seed of a plant, and because you would throw it on the road or whatever, they would actually at some point in time the cigarette butt, the seed would actually germinate and there would be a plant that will come in out of it. And that's the kind of stuff that they did to be able to be environment friendly. A lot of people do that when it comes to pencils as well. So if at all you're throwing a pencil away, it actually could potentially have a seed at some point in time which grows into a plant. That's the kind of different innovative ideas that people are doing when it comes to being environment friendly or doing something for the environment over there. I'd want you to read, I don't know what page is this on, but when you're talking about the some EMA initiatives, which is talking about Boeing, Rolls-Royce, and other examples over there.
Sir, we have the updated version. So we have Beyond Mint and Nike, Google, Facebook, and Amazon.
The older versions like us have Rolls Royce, etc. But if you have Google and Facebook, then give that a quick read. Guys, the world has moved to a place where every email that you send, because if I'm sending out an email to 10 people, um, I'm adding to carbon emissions because email requires servers, server space, and routing, etc., and all of that bit. So if I reduce the number of people I send an email to, I'm actually helping saving carbon emissions. Every time I book a flight, today morning I was booking a flight to Bangalore on Monday morning. I have a notification that comes in the last 2 years. This has been my carbon emissions as a traveler. It's just about creating that piece of awareness because of all the miles that I would have flown across different countries and across different cities, across so many flights over a period of time. So the objective is to be able to try and create as much awareness. And there'll always be a question that they will ask to say, is this meeting that you're going for, can it be done virtually? If the answer is yes, they say save the planet, save, don't travel. But if the answer is no, is where they let you really end up fly and go and meet the client, etc., and other things. So there are multiple different things that the world is really doing to be able to save the planet in different ways, and really, really interesting things that you can actually think of and be a part of. In fact, if you really look at it from the next 5 years perspective, two roles which will really, really open up at some point in time. One is the entire piece around sustainability, which covers this entire piece around being net zero, etc., and all of those bits. And the other one is with respect to data analytics. So, and if you're ever interested in having a conversation around either of this with me, feel, please feel free. They are two topics which are very, very close to my heart, and always been a big fan of both of these as well. Okay, so if you're done with reading a lot of this bit, I'll move on to section 16, which is classifications of how do you classify any of these environment costs. The first one, if you look at it from that perspective, is the entire piece around environment. Is it easier if I share my screen, or are you all more comfortable reading through the textbook?
Sir, please share the screen.
Tell me if this is visible, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the way you classify what are the costs that you really incur when it comes to the entire piece around being environment friendly? The first one is environment preventive cost. So what are the type of things that you really do to ensure the fact that you are not polluting the environment? Are you treating waste, etc., and all of those things? All of it comes under environment prevention costs over there. Environment detection costs is where you have audit that you end up doing on what are you contaminating anything? Are you not contaminating anything in terms of water, etc., and the air? And that are you adhering to the standard that have been set? So, for example, if the government allows you to use plastic which is only above a certain micron thick, are you really doing that, or are you really using something which is less than that? So everything which is more post facto audit is more detection than prevention at that point in time. The third one is with respect to the entire failure cost. So if you've created something and you're really looking at disposing it off, and when you're looking at what is the cost of things that go wrong, is very, very important when you're really studying internal failure costs over there. So if you read over here, it says cost incurred from performing activities that have been produced contaminants and waste that have not been discharged into the environment. So how are you managing the entire piece around dealing with scrap, recyclable of waste, disposing of material, all of those that comes in as a part of internal failure cost over here. And the last one is with respect to external failure cost, which is really talking about if some things have gone wrong and you are responsible to ensure that it's taken care of or addressed, you still have to incur cost around that piece. So if you really break all of this down into these four buckets, it's about what are you doing proactively from a preventive perspective? What are you doing from a detective perspective, which may be post facto checks, audits, etc. All of those pieces. And this is more which is more proactive, and the other two are more failure oriented, failure within internally or identified externally after you've gone ahead and discharged something out to the environment. So that's more from a timing perspective. So those will be the four pieces of how do you address any of these environment related costs perspective. When you're talking about techniques of how do you manage input, outputs, how do you manage material, etc., comes in as a part over here. If you are buying something which is 1 ton and you have an output of 0.8 tons, there is 200 kgs which has gone missing somewhere in the middle. And it's about accounting for what do you buy versus what do you produce, and how is it going through the entire chain of activities. Is it disappearing into thin air? Is it changing forms? Is it wastage that comes out? And that's a part of your standard cost, standard wastage, etc. All of those pieces, all of that comes in when you're really studying input output. It's about studying what do you buy, what do you produce, and what's the difference between the two that ends up happening. At the end of the day, it can be done for anything. Even if you're running a restaurant, for example, the way that they end up manufacturing, or they end up not manufacturing, but the way they end up monitoring a lot of these activities is actually input output. If I have bought so many kgs of chicken, you have created so many portions of maybe a butter chicken, chicken tandoori, whatever it may be. Hence, you should, and that's been your output in terms of weight, because each of them are predetermined in terms of what grammage goes in each portion. You should either have so much left, or the balance has gone into wastage. So that's how any of these businesses which have materials involved, you really use the entire piece around input output to be able to compute what has been the difference between the two. Can you give this a read when you're talking about examples of environment cost and input output? Do you have that in your textbook as well? Are we done? Shall we proceed? Two other types of costing, which is 3 and 4, which is activity-based costing and lifestyle costing is some life cycle costing is something that we already did and covered as a part of this chapter earlier or the previous lecture. Now we'll spend some time to be able to understand what is flow cost accounting. What this does, it does not necessarily only use material to be able to understand the flow from one point to the other, but it actually uses the entire system of organization. How is my organization structured? Where does wastage happen? Whether it is to do with information, whether it is to do with duplication, whether it is to do with material, whether it is to do with activities, etc. How does it's a larger point than just what we just read about, but this is not just material flow. That's the part which is very important. So it covers material, it covers systems, and the entire piece around how does this get delivered to my customers? How do I dispose of my waste products? All of that, and identifying where is the really impact on the environment in the entire value of chain of systems and activities. That's what flow accounting ends up. Activity-based costing, pretty simple. We did this piece. You identify cost drivers, you identify cost pools, you tag them together, you account for it in that particular way as a part of activity-based costing, right? So if there is anything from a environment perspective, you identify what's the cost driver, you identify what's what's giving rise to that piece of activity, and you attribute it to that particular activity over there. When you're talking about life cycle costing, it's primarily like we had studied. Life cycle costing from an accounting perspective is done what's the impact of a certain product over the entire life cycle when it comes to revenues, costs, etc. Help take decisions accordingly. But when you're talking about from an environmental accounting perspective, you're really looking at the fact that how does a product impact the environment through the entire life cycle of the product? At some point in time, does it get worse? At some point in time, does it get better? What are the type of things that can be done at some point in time for the entire product? If you pick up the entire product life cycle perspective, you will see that over the next 4, 5, 7, 8 years, there will be all the product that we're really talking about from a life cycle costing perspective. To increase the life cycle of a product, they are always going to come back with more environment friendly options. I mean, I will not be surprised if today we are looking at, if you look at a Coke bottle, it comes in a plastic bottle, right? They will come back with more synthetic ways of being able to deliver the same products onto you, just so that at the end of the day you could throw it off and it would still be biodegradable in some shape or form, to ensure the fact that it does have better customer appeal and better customer presence at some point in time. So a lot of that is to do with life cycle costing. It will tremendously increase the life cycle of a product if they can actually come up with options as such, which will really empower customers to be able to take better decisions in favor of the organization. We've pretty much spoken about advantages and disadvantages of environment management costing. It'll be lovely for you to read through that before we move on to TYU 9 and we solve for the sum. I want everyone to read the balance piece and then let's move to TYU 9. I think you will get a WhatsApp message sometime soon for the class to move to 3 o'clock tomorrow. So Okay, TYU 9. Everyone, who's got the right answer?
So I got 65,000.
55,000.
65.
65.
Unfortunately,
64,000.
that is not an option. Sir.
Achha. So you go one by one. Which are the different costs that you took?
Staff training, that is 50.
Okay.
Then site feasibility, that is 10.
Why did you take that?
Sir, feasibility studies is a prevention cost.
Okay.
Then, sir, I took protective equipment cost,
Hmm.
that is 4.
Hmm.
And certification cost, that is 1.
But okay. Anyone else?
So I got 64
Okay. Why did you not take certification cost?
because I think it's internal.
It is?
Internal. This.
Okay. Now the certification cost over here, Harsh, we don't know it is environment preventive cost, right?
Sir, they have clearly mentioned it in environmental prevention cost certification, obtaining certification relating to meeting the requirements of national and international standards.
But how do you know what certification is this?
So, sir, इधर भी तो बोला नहीं ना कि clearly कि it's not related to environment.
कौन सा वाला?
Sir, certification cost environmental prevention में already है. तो अभी यहाँ पर भी थोड़ी ना दिया है.
So I would have only certification cost I would have taken as an internal cost rather than it being a environment preventive cost.
Sir, it says total environmental cost.
What is the total of these costs that will be classified as environment preventive cost?
No, sir, the upper portion, the total environmental cost for the previous period were as follows. So these relate to the environment.
But this will be more internal is what we are saying. I'm saying there are two things. One is the fact that this is more internal. Is it an environment preventive cost? Will it help me to prevent or will it help me to educate? The others will be specifically with the objective of preventing.
Sir,
So,
how
sir,
come certification
Disposal cost is also preventing.
Which one?
Disposal cost. Waste disposal cost, the third one.
That will become detective. No? That is after it has been created.
So
It'll
that
be
will
post.
be sir internal failure. No?
It will be exactly.
Internal failure cost.
Exactly.
So I don't get it. The certification cost, how come it is coming under internal failure cost?
See, ideally, if you look at it from a certification cost perspective, it falls under both buckets over here. It's a thin layer between both if you end up looking at it. Because when you look at it from certification cost, the objective of doing a certification is also to ensure the fact that I'm educating people to ensure the fact that they don't do something in the future, right? Which is very similar to a staff training. Nothing but staff training with a certificate is a certification cost if done with a certain body at some point in time. But the way that they're looking at it over here is the fact that when I'm doing a certification, it is more of an internal thing to be able to get. I mean, it's educating rather than it being with the objective of reducing the entire piece. And over here, if you look at it specifically, from if there was any bit of training that needed to be done, the staff training on environment awareness has already been specifically mentioned over there at that point in time. And that's why if this would have been certificate cost with the objective, certificate cost to reduce environment wastage, I would have taken that 1,000 over there at that point. It's a thin line. It's not white or black over here. But within the options, if I have these four options, which is 64,000, 50,000, 79,000 and 80,000. Even if I would have reached up to 65,000, I would have gone ahead and ticked 64,000 because that's the closest that would come to it. Is that cool? That's how I would have done this one. Which comes closest to my answer?
I've done the same, sir.
Any questions so far on EMA? That brings us to the end of this chapter. Now, I know for a fact that we've got 30 odd minutes left. Should we start another chapter and leave it half, or do you think that we should maybe pick that up in the subsequent lecture? Show of hands. Meloni.
Sure, up to you.
Okay. What
But
do you,
if we start that today, then tomorrow you said you're going to do fifth chapter. So
yes, because then we'll be half chapter done with something, and then we'll have another chapter which we'll do tomorrow. So we'll be in the midst of two chapters, so to speak.
yeah, up to you then.
So shall we call it a day and then we cover up in our subsequent week? Harsh,
Yes, sir.
are you aligned with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The others? Pratham, you're okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Be prepared for your test for tomorrow and day after. So the Parla boys and girls, please be prepared for your test day after tomorrow. And we'll pick up one more chapter. The only thing is that the Parla batch will be one chapter ahead, but I'll cover that up some of it. Cool.
Oh,
Have a good
so,
Friday. Yeah.
sir, what are your plans for the exam kit? How are you going to give homework and all?
Kal discuss kare. Are you coming to class?
No, sir, I will be attending online.
Oh, acha. So the tests that I give will all be out of the exam kits.
No, sir, I'm not talking about the test. Sir, exam kit homework, MCQs and section C.
That is what I'm saying. You will have at least 4 tests that you will do, and
Yes.
all 4 tests will be sums all from the exam kits.
सर मैं बोल रहा हूँ होमवर्क आप कैसे दोगे मतलब एग्जाम किट का होमवर्क हम लोग ने किया नहीं एमसीक्यू
मैं आपको एग्जाम किट्स का ही हूँ.
आप भी दोगे ना नहीं आप
हाँ.
भी दोगे ना मतलब हम
हाँ.
लोग खुद से मतलब पिछले ऑडिट में मतलब सर ने बोला था खुद से करते रहना.
हाँ. So it will be a
Sir,
mix of both, but I don't tell you to do it right now because I will tell you to do it tomorrow.
ओके तो आप ही दोगे आपके एंड से आप होमवर्क देंगे और कवर अप.
I will tell you which one to do when.
So then for the test preparation, like, do we look at the exam kit or then we just like read the chapter, do the TYs and understand the
I have
concept?
given you a trade secret. I'm going to give you sums from the exam kit. So if you want to be well prepared for your test, study your exam kit. You don't want to be well prepared for your test, good luck to you. Imagine if we've reached a stage where I'm telling you where the question will come from. But if there are 10 questions for a certain topic, I may give you 1 or I may give you 2. Now it's your luck whether you've studied what I've given you.
So for how many marks is the test?
450. Aman, you asked this question?
No, sir.
I guess it was Yugan, sir.
Yugand, you asked this question?
Yes, sir.
450 mark.
Okay, sir.
Will that help you prepare better?
Yeah, I guess.
Any other questions? कितने घंटे का होगा? 1.5 घंटे. कितने सवाल होंगे? 6 सवाल. Any other questions? Where will it come from? From your exam kit. और कोई सवाल? The last time I told people to prepare, actually this doesn't.